I am deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty.
A leaked development out of Buckingham Palace has sent the British media into a frenzy. King Charles III reportedly summoned William and Catherine to a top-secret meeting, blindsiding everyone by handing them the ultimate keys to the Royal Treasury's power. In a shocking twist, Queen Camilla was completely barred from the room, despite this being the most monumental decision since Charles's coronation. But that was only the beginning. Just hours after discovering she had been frozen out, Camilla allegedly stormed the king's private study, demanding that Charles immediately alter his will. More alarming still, she reportedly issued a chilling ultimatum warning that William's ascension to the throne would be anything but peaceful. In a state of panic, King Charles called an emergency midnight session of the Privy Council. The meeting dragged on for hours before a flood of highly classified details began leaking to the press. While William and Catherine are now being hailed as the modern future of the monarchy, Camilla finds herself at the dead center of the fiercest royal power struggle in decades. Has King Charles secretly chosen William and Catherine to hold the keys to the monarchy's future, officially freezing Camilla out of the grand design? And what truly transpired behind the closed doors of Buckingham Palace that drove the king to make the most ruthless decision of his reign? Since his coronation in May 2023, King Charles III had remained acutely aware that his reign was a challenging transitional period. The relationship between him and his eldest son, Prince William, was not merely a paternal bond, but the life and death mooring of an ancient institution. Confronted by family fractures and intense public scrutiny, his greatest desire now was to leave behind a peaceful, rock-solid throne for the next generation before it was too late. Following major upheavals within the royal family, particularly the deep rift with his younger brother, now residing in the United States, the pressure weighing upon William's shoulders grew more crushing by the day. To King Charles, William was not just the rightful heir, but the most trusted ally in the fight to preserve the monarchy's legitimacy. The understanding between father and son had been forged over decades, yet it was steeped in a quiet solemnity, as both fully understood the heavy price of the crown. Seated beside William was Catherine, Princess of Wales, the hope and anchor of the royal family. Stepping into the monarchy through the wedding of the century in 2011, Catherine had steadily proven herself to be the epitome of composure, devotion, and poise. Within the heart of Buckingham, King Charles viewed his daughter-in-law not merely as the wife of his successor, but as a core pillar, a psychological anchor, keeping the royal vessel from capsizing in turbulent seas. The closed room deep within Buckingham Palace was enveloped in an atmosphere of breathless solemnity. King Charles III sat pensively in a large velvet-upholstered armchair. His face was deeply etched with the lines of exhaustion, his thin hands tightly clasped together. Following prolonged rounds of medical treatment, the monarch appeared distinctly gaunt and frail compared to his recent public appearances. Standing opposite him were Prince William and Princess Catherine. Both were dressed in formal yet understated attire, their faces reflecting a mixture of profound reverence and anxiety as they observed the king's countenance. Beside them, a few of the royal council's closest advisors stood retracted into the shadows, keeping their breathing shallow, as if terrified of shattering the gravity of the moment. All of them had been summoned under absolute secrecy, entirely devoid of media lenses, and most tellingly of all, without any sign of Queen Camilla. Her absence hung like a vast void, sparking countless silent questions in the minds of those present. King Charles shifted slightly, his thoughts drifting toward decisions of historic proportions. He knew all too well that his health was declining at an alarming rate, and that hesitation could plunge the monarchy into a constitutional crisis should the situation take an unexpected turn for the worse. The old king's gaze came to rest upon a small mahogany box resting on the table. With a slow but resolute motion, he opened the lid, revealing a master key crafted of antique bronze, the ultimate symbol of authority, governing the entirety of the British royal family's core treasures and assets at Buckingham. The king lifted the heavy key with both hands. He did not look at William first. Instead, his deeply reflective gaze went straight toward Catherine. In his mind, handing over this key was not purely a transfer of material wealth management, but a supreme spiritual entrustment. He saw in his daughter-in-law an absolute steadfastness and loyalty qualities the royal family craved more than ever to maintain stability. King Charles signaled for the couple to step closer. As the four hands of William and Catherine simultaneously touched the cold bronze shaft of the key, an invisible current of raw emotion seemed to surge through the room. The handover took place in absolute silence, without a single spoken declaration. Yet everyone felt its immense weight. In the corner of the room, the close advisors stole glances at one another. Faint frowns and brief loaded eye contact passed between them. They wondered what had driven His Majesty to make such a landmark decision, while completely sidelining his lawfully wedded wife. This exclusion was no mere oversight. It was a clear political message shaping a future where Camilla seemingly no longer fit into the king's strategic vision. Once the key rested securely in the hands of the next generation, King Charles leaned back slightly into his chair, letting out a weary sigh, though the tension on his face had somewhat eased. He raised a hand to signal the end of the audience. William and Catherine slowly stepped back, bowing to the monarch with deep reverence before turning toward the grand doors. The king quietly watched the retreating figures of his son and daughter-in-law as they vanished behind the heavy wooden doors. His gaze was profound, holding both a sense of relief and a vague anxiety over the storms bound to brew from Camilla's absence and the unpredictable public fallout should this veil of secrecy one day be torn apart. King Charles III remained motionless in the armchair, his weary gaze fixed entirely on the empty space before him. Realizing his aging father seemed utterly drained of energy following the handover of the key, William slowly stepped closer, his footsteps light as if careful not to disturb the king's train of thought. The Prince of Wales gently drew up a low stool and sat beside his father, close enough to clearly discern the liver spots and the pale skin on the monarch's face. He felt a quiet sense of pride at being so completely trusted by his father, yet he was simultaneously beset by a vague sense of foreboding. Looking at his father's trembling hands, William suddenly realized that the peaceful interval he enjoyed beneath the shadow of the current reign was shrinking faster than he had ever imagined. A natural impulse of resistance welled up within the air. He wanted to believe and tried to convince himself that his father's physical condition had not yet deteriorated to such a dire state that this dynasty still required a sitting king to weather the storms rather than rushing the younger generation to the crest of the wave. Reading his son's mind without a single word spoken, King Charles turned his head slightly, his gaze meeting William's anxious eyes. The old king slowly lifted his gaunt hand, gently patting the back of his son's hand in a reassuring gesture, though it served equally to confirm a harsh reality. Charles knew his son was trying to cling to hope, but as the head of the House of Windsor, he could not allow himself or his successor the luxury of self-delusion. The physical decline following long sleepless nights of illness was the starkest warning he received each day. He did not fear death, but he dreaded the prospect of the monarchy falling into chaos and a constitutional crisis should he suddenly collapse without meticulous advance preparation. With slow gestures, King Charles directed his gaze toward the portrait of the late Queen Elizabeth II hanging high on the wall. That movement betrayed a deep nostalgia and the invisible pressure born of his predecessor's legacy. His soul remaining objective, was to establish a solid bedrock for William and Catherine. He needed his son to shed any lingering reliance, to step into a leadership role starting this very moment, and to collaborate with royal advisors to familiarize himself with the covert powers of which the recent key was the opening symbol. While William remained immersed in silence, struggling to digest his father's resolute spirit, King Charles shifted his gaze once more, directing it towards the empty vanity table where Catherine had stood moments before. The old king's eyes suddenly flared with a rare glint of warmth and relief. He tapped his index finger gently on the wooden surface, a small detail that carried special emphasis. That action subtly conveyed the king's profound strategic thinking regarding his daughter-in-law. Charles placed his absolute faith in Catherine not out of personal favoritism, but because he saw through to her vital influence over the public's heart during this period of crisis. To him, William was the embodiment of legitimacy in law, but Catherine was the one who held the key to the hearts of the public. The combination of the two was the perfect formula to secure the throne. Sitting beside him, William intently observed every movement, every shifting expression on his father's face. The sheer determination and the immense expectation radiating from King Charles's eyes felt like a splash of cold water to the Prince of Wales's mind, shocking him into complete awareness of reality. His initial instinct to evade vanished entirely, replaced by a bitter yet necessary awakening. For the first time in his life, William felt fully and clearly that his father was truly entering the final chapters of his life, and that the shadow of a new reign had already begun to stretch across his own shoulders. The room fell into silence once more, as the dark of night began to swallow the final glimmers of twilight. William rose quietly and adjusted the lapels of his suit jacket, his face now stripped of hesitation, replaced instead by a stern, weathered expression mirroring that of his father in the chair. He bowed to his father one last time, his hand instinctively brushing the pocket, holding the secret key, distinctly feeling the tempestuous shift in royal history that was about to unfold from this very room. News of the private meeting could not remain hidden for long from the eyes and ears of a woman who had spent half her life surviving the covert battles of the palace. In her private quarters on the second floor of Buckingham, Queen Camilla stood motionless by the large window overlooking the inner courtyard. The guest list for the secret key handover ceremony had just been leaked to her by a close source via a hastily scribbled note. Her fingers tightened, crushing the fragile piece of paper inside her palm, a direct reflection of the storm raging within her heart. The omission of the name Camilla, alongside Charles, William, and Catherine, was no impulsive oversight. She understood perfectly well that this was a calculated exclusion, a silent blade severing her from the power center of the monarchy's future. Her feelings of resentment and wounded pride quickly morphed into sheer terror. Camilla paced frantically around the room, the sharp thud of her heels against the wooden floor sounding dry and hurried, mirroring her racing pulse. For years, she had endured endless public backlash, persistently carving out her position alongside Charles to secure the crown she wore today. And yet, the moment the king grew frail, this dynasty turned its back on her with astonishing speed. Camilla's gaze shifted toward the large mirror, staring intently at the marks of time on her face when the image of Catherine suddenly flashed through her mind. The composure, the youth, and the fervent affection the public harbored for the Princess of Wales served as a ruthless reminder that Camilla's era was drawing to a close and that Catherine was the chosen future icon to shield the throne. She felt like a temporary guest in her own husband's home, an outcast pushed to the margins when vital decisions were being made. Camilla's anxiety reached a crescendo when a senior official from the Royal Property Management Department, who had long been covertly subservient to her, entered the room to present a classified report. Not a single word was exchanged. The official merely placed a document bearing the red wax seal of the Chancellor's office onto the table with a deeply apprehensive bow. As she flipped through the pages, Camilla's eyes widened at the cold legal details. The master key Charles had just handed to William and his wife was no mere ceremonial prop. It carried the right to execute, manage, and freeze the entirety of the monarchy's symbolic assets, including private estates and the royal family's core jewelry collections. This meant that if anything were to happen to Charles, Camilla's entire financial livelihood and status would rest completely in the hands of a stepson who held no affection for her. This confirmation was the final straw, incinerating the last remnants of patience in the powerful woman's mind. Camilla slammed the file shut, the sharp sound echoing through the empty room. Her lips thinned into a resolute line, her eyes flashing with the cold, fierce determination of someone backed into a corner. She could not sit idly by and watch her power and future security evaporate with every frail breath the king drew. All royal restraint and protocol now became meaningless in the face of survival instinct. She walked straight to her vanity table, ripping off her gemstone brooch in a defiant shedding of binding etiquette, then marched toward the corridor leading to King Charles's private study. Every stride Camilla took no longer possessed its usual grace, carrying instead a built-up resentment and a frantic resolve to seize back the upper hand. She knew she was wagering a dangerous gamble, but confronting the monarch directly was now her only path to save herself before the curtain of the future closed entirely. The door to King Charles III's private study was flung open without warning or prior permission from the guards. Queen Camilla stepped inside, bringing with her a wave of tense pressure that completely shattered the natural serenity of the room. King Charles, who had been leaning his head wearily against the mahogany frame, looked up. The fleeting surprise on his face quickly gave way to a stern gravity upon seeing the cold, terrifyingly resolute demeanor of his wife. Dispensing with any social courtesies or her usual tender gestures, Camilla marched straight to the king's desk, planting both hands firmly on the wooden surface, confronting the monarch directly with an unblinking, defiant gaze. The resentment built up since that afternoon had stripped Camilla of her customary shrewdness. She pulled the classified document regarding the royal key's powers from her pocket and slammed it down in front of Charles. That decisive motion felt like a tacit declaration of war. Her eyes burned with razor-sharp intensity, locking onto her husband's gaunt face. With hand gestures that were highly agitated, yet forced under a semblance of control, she repeatedly tapped her fingers against the property clauses in the monarchy's current will. The fear of abandonment and the prospect of being left empty-handed after the king's passing had driven her to a frantic decision to issue an ultimatum. She employed threatening body language, implying that if Charles did not immediately sign a decree, amending the will guaranteeing her an independent portion of the estate and an inviolable status, she would use all her covert connections and media influence to erect legal and press barriers. Ensuring William's ascension to power would be anything but smooth. Watching the woman who had accompanied him through life's countless upheavals now use the fate of the dynasty to threaten him, King Charles felt a profound shock reverberate down his spine. His initial bewilderness rapidly transformed into an ultimate fury. His complexion shifted from pale to a flushed crimson, his chest heaving violently beneath his thin wool sweater. His hands, which had been trembling from his illness, suddenly clenched into fists and slammed hard against the armrests of his chair. This sudden outburst caused Camilla to startle and take a step back. To Charles, Camilla's warning was not merely selfish. It was an act of blatant treason aimed at the very institution he was spending his final breaths to protect. Her recklessness had struck the core artery of the House of Windsor loyalty and the stability of the throne. Without giving Camilla a chance to explain or diffuse the situation, King Charles stood up resolutely, even as his body shook from exhaustion and anger. He swept her file off the desk, sending it crashing to the floor, a definitive act of severance. The gaze he leveled at her held no trace of past affection, carrying only the coldness of an emperor punishing a rebel. Turning his back on her, he walked straight to the internal telephone, reserved exclusively for royal emergencies. With a series of rapid, decisive keystrokes, the king directly issued an urgent order summoning the royal council and his supreme legal advisors into the dead of night. Camilla stood frozen in place, witnessing the entirety of her husband's thunderous reaction. The initial confidence and arrogance on her face began to fracture, replaced instead by a belated terror as she realized she had vastly underestimated the iron will of a conservative king. When Charles put down the receiver and signaled for the royal guards to intervene, Camilla understood she had pushed her gamble much too far. Mere minutes after Camilla was escorted from the room, the palace's closest intelligence officers and advisors began appearing one by one in the corridor. The lights of Buckingham Palace blazed to life across its core sectors. In the middle of the night, a stark sign that a terrifying internal crisis was underway. A closed-door session of the entire royal council was set for that very night, and the atmosphere of the British monarchy officially entered a sleepless vigil, bracing for a verdict that could completely rewrite the current order of power. The inner chamber of the Privy Council was bathed in a harsh, cold light that illuminated the solemn faces of supreme advisors, royal attorneys, and core members of the Regency Council. The clock had already struck past 2 in the morning, yet not a single soul showed signs of fatigue. The atmosphere was thick with tension and gravity. King Charles III sat at the head of the long, antique oak table, his complexion gray with exhaustion, but his eyes flared with a resolute, frigid intensity never seen before. His presence in the dead of night was a testament to the sheer severity of this internal crisis. With slow yet decisive motions, the king personally pushed the dossier documenting the entirety of the confrontation and Queen Camilla's threats toward the Lord Chancellor. As they turned the pages, recording her behavior using Prince William's succession to demand assets, the members of the Privy Council could not conceal their shock, exchanging subtle frowns and silent shakes of their heads. To the minds representing the law and the survival of the institution, Camilla's actions had transcended a mere family dispute. They had officially crossed the red line, constituting a direct threat to the security and stability of the House of Windsor. Consensus was reached swiftly without the need for extensive debate. Such a dangerous precedent had to be crushed immediately. Queen Camilla entered, escorted by 2 trusted royal guards. Stripped of the pride and fierce determination of a few hours prior, her face was now pale, her steps somewhat faltering as she faced a tribunal that universally directed stern, unyielding glances toward her. She scanned the round table, desperately searching for a shred of sympathy or a saving grace from those who were once close allies, but all she received in return was cold silence and averted gazes. Realizing her absolute isolation, Camilla's composure shattered completely. She approached King Charles, her knees trembling, as if about to buckle beneath her. In an unprecedented act of submission, she gripped the edge of the table, her hands clasped together in a pleading posture. Her lips trembled and belated tears rolled down cheeks deeply etched with the lines of time. She attempted through gestures to express ultimate remorse, repeatedly casting imploring looks at her husband, hoping that the decades of unwavering marital affection might move him. She was ready to renounce all property claims, ready to sign any confidentiality agreement, so long as she could retain her title as queen and avoid exile from the core operations of the royal family. Yet in the face of his wife's helpless pleading, King Charles remained motionless like a stone statue. The king's silence was the most ruthless punishment, demonstrating that he had completely elevated his duty as a monarch above personal sentiment. At a sharp hand signal from the king, the Lord Chancellor rose on behalf of the council to solemnly read the ratified emergency decree. Under its terms, King Charles officially ordered the revocation of all rights for Queen Camilla to participate and advise on or interfere with any internal matters concerning the future of the monarchy, including her right to appear at upcoming constitutional ceremonies. The decree was a death sentence to the entire political influence Camilla had spent half her life building. As the decree was stamped with the crimson royal wax seal, Camilla appeared entirely soulless. Her hands dropped to her sides, her glazed eyes staring blankly into the void. Without further explanation, without resistance, she slowly turned and walked out of the council room amidst the absolute silence of the entire assembly. The sound of her solitary footsteps faded down the corridor, leaving behind a cold vacuum that marked the total collapse of an era of covert influence named Camilla within the heart of Buckingham Palace. The thick veil of night shrouding Buckingham Palace was finally dispelled by the first rays of a new dawn. However, the morning's peace was swiftly shattered as major news outlets simultaneously flashed shocking headlines. Information regarding the secret key handover ceremony between King Charles William and Catherine had unexpectedly leaked into the open. Across major newsrooms and throughout social media platforms, waves of discussion exploded at a dizzying pace. Long-distance photographs of the blazing lights inside the palace's core sectors in the dead of night added further credibility to a monumental court crisis. Inside his office, Prince William stood watching a computer screen that continuously updated the newsfeed. This leak was a heavy blow to the smooth transition plan his father had mapped out. William's eyes reflected intense strain as he scanned the public's commentary. A vast section of the public and royal commentators immediately praised the king's decision, viewing it as a wise move and a deeply responsible preparation for the future. They directed their admiration toward William and Catherine, proudly hailing them as the perfect faces of the monarchy and the rock-solid anchors that would guide the dynasty through the storm. While this fervent support brought William a modicum of comfort, the weight pressing down on his shoulders multiplied because of it. Conversely, another current of public opinion raised sharp, highly critical skepticism. In-depth analytical pieces began dissecting the total absence of Queen Camilla from this symbolic event. People questioned whether a covert palace coup had taken place or if an irreparable rift had formed within the House of Windsor. Suspicions regarding a power transfer taking place in the shadows, bypassing standard protocols, began to ignite and spread, threatening the very legitimacy King Charles had fought so hard to protect. Standing beside her husband, Princess Catherine gently placed a tender yet firm hand on William's shoulder. Her demeanor maintained an incredible composure. Her eyes looked straight at the media crisis management file resting on the desk, manifesting a readiness to confront the storm of public opinion to protect the king's legacy. Down in the Royal Communications Office, senior staff members were operating at maximum capacity in a state of muted panic. Telephone lines rang incessantly as global news agencies demanded an official explanation. In the face of this suffocating pressure, a brief but highly calculated statement was issued. Buckingham Palace resolutely declined to confirm or deny any speculation, choosing a pregnant silence regarding the details of the Privy Council's midnight session. This deliberate ambiguity served both to protect Camilla's remaining dignity and to preserve the sacred weight of the key handover ceremony. In her darkened room on the second floor, Camilla looked out the window where reporters were swarming the palace gates. She slipped the ring of power from her finger, placing it slowly onto the table, accepting the reality that her influence had completely vanished. On the opposite side of the palace, King Charles III sat quietly in his study, his hand gently brushing a family photograph. though the truth behind the curtain would never be fully disclosed. And though the media storm still howled outside, the old king smiled wearily yet serenely. He knew he had fulfilled his ultimate wish. The royal key no longer rested in a dark treasury. It was now in the hands of his worthy heirs, becoming a symbolic beacon for a new dawn and a steadfast future for the British monarchy. After reading the story, do you believe King Charles III's decision to completely sideline Queen Camilla was a ruthless yet necessary move for the greater good, or was it an act of injustice against the woman who stood by him through decades of storms? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.